Well. Good morning. That's a hot topic to get into today. None of us want to talk too loud about that. Afraid we'll jinx it. Good morning. My name is Jarrett. I'm one of the lead pastors here at Soul City. And for those of you who are here in person, come on, just look around the room. Y'all look fantastic. Just give yourselves a little round of applause. Y'all made it. You're here. You look good. You look great. For those of you who are with us online, I'm assuming you look great in your sweats or whatever it is that you're doing right now. We're so glad that you have joined with us, carved out this time for your own transformational relationship with God. This is such a vital thing that we do when we gather together like this. And we've been in a teaching series for the last month and a half or so where we've been breaking down what does it really mean to be in a transforming relationship with Jesus. Kelly talked about that a second ago, but what does that really mean? We talk about it every week here, but what does it really look like? And so we've been breaking it down. This week, actually, I want to give you a framework to better understand how this transforming life with God actually works, how to find where you are at in this life with God, and how to find God in your everyday life. But before we get into that, I just want to, because Kelly brought it up, I just feel like we have to acknowledge, for those of us specifically, this is just for those of us who are here in Chicago, we're having a moment with weather right now, aren't we? Like, we're all just feeling a certain kind of way about where we're actually, none of us want to say it out loud, but it kind of feels like winter is over. I don't want to say it too loud because I don't want to jinx it, but we all have this like love-hate relationship with winter around here, don't we? We love the idea of wintering. We hate the winter part of wintering, right? Especially when it goes on and on and on forever. See, when I moved to Chicago over 25 years ago, I moved here from California. I had no relationship with winter. Never heard of it, never had to deal with it before. But that first winter, I worked as a doorman on Lakeshore Drive. And when my nose hairs froze for the first time in my life, I questioned the very notion of a good and loving God. How could God allow this to happen? And what I quickly learned after just a year or so living in the Midwest is that the Midwest doesn't just have 4 seasons, we have many seasons. And if you've lived here for a while, or maybe you just moved here recently, you know that we actually have 12 seasons. I mean, there's winter, we all know about that. But then there's kind of fool's winter, where it's not quite fully winter. And then there's second winter, we felt that one. Then there's the spring of deception. We've been living in that for the last couple of weeks where it's like, hey, we can wear shorts now. Not so fast, because there's third winter. Then there's the pollinating, we love that time. Then you have actual spring for about 4 weeks, and then it's summer. And then there's hell's front porch where it's so hot in August. And then there's a false fall where we think we're there, but nope, it comes back, and then we have actual fall. This is how it actually works here in Chicago, yes? I mean, it is not, we can't just have 4 seasons. We gotta have 12. And it's important to know where you're actually at in the year, right? Because it helps you know how to actually get through it. If you don't know where you're at, you don't know how much longer you got to go. It can be a really lonely time for you. And it got me thinking, like, wouldn't it be great if there was a way of you knowing where you were actually at with God? If you actually knew where you were at in your life with God, what if you had a way of knowing that sort of that you are here sticker that we just saw? Like, you can say, oh, this is where I'm at with my life with God. This is where things are at. And it helps give you some context to the circumstances around you, maybe some comfort for the challenges that you may be facing, or maybe just knowing where you're at would bring some clarity to all of life's complexities. See, it's so important in this transforming life with God to actually know where you are at. Where are you at? Because the question I would put to you is, how can you grow if you don't know where you are at? Like, all of us, I think at some level want to grow, right? But how can you grow if you don't know where you are at, where you are starting from, where you are currently at? We all have hopes and dreams and desires of who we want to be and where we want to go, but few of us actually know where we are at in our life and in our life with God. And it's hard to grow with God if you don't know where you are at. Well, thankfully for those of us who actually have the privilege of living here in the Midwest, God has given us a gift, whether it feels like it or not. He's given us a gift, a deeper reason for living here, a better reason for living here. I mean, aside from the stunning topography, the reasonable tax rates, and the flawlessly functioning freeways, other than those things, we have a gift actually of living here in the Midwest, because we're given this powerful picture, and I think it's an inescapable invitation to see where we are at and what God is up to by seeing your life with God through the lens of seasons. to actually see where you are at in your life with God through seasons. Now, you no doubt by now, wherever you're at in your relationship with God, my hunch is you probably already know that a journey with God, a life with God, is not just some linear path. It's like, then I do this, and then I do this, and then God does this, and it's not how it works. It's not some up and to the right kind of thing where it's like, well, as long as I keep showing up at church, and life's gonna get better and better and better. It's not how it works. It works in seasons. And each season is different from the other seasons, but yet each season is dependent on the other seasons. That there's this idea that you can actually know where you are at and grow where you are at so that you can keep going with God at the center of whatever season you're in. When you know where you're at, you can actually begin to grow with God. Now, this idea of seasons is not my idea. It's not a new idea, and surprisingly, it's God's idea. This is actually something God came up with when he created the world and when he wanted us to give us a way of looking at our life and how it works in seasons. And in fact, in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, we're given a powerful picture of what that actually looks like. So go ahead and if you're in this room, grab a Bible. It looks just like this. You should be able to grab that right under your seat, or if you're up in the balcony, grab it off the chair there. Turn to page 540 in the Soul City Bible. If you're with us online, you can open up a phone, or maybe you like to do that here. You can open up a tab, whatever, to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I just want to give you a picture. We're not going to dive too deep into this text, because what I want to do is use this text as a way of seeing what God is talking about when we see our life through seasons. Now, let me give you some quick context into Ecclesiastes 3. The book of Ecclesiastes is actually what's known as a book of wisdom in the Bible, similar if you've ever read anything from the book of Proverbs. It's very similar to that. In fact, most scholars, biblical scholars, agree that the book of Ecclesiastes was probably most likely written by King Solomon, who also wrote the book of Proverbs. It's a refreshingly honest and spiritually insightful, and if I'm being honest, at times kind of salty text that really just kind of says it like it is. And in the beginning of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1, we see this idea, this picture of seasons. And this is what the writer says. He says that there's actually a season. Everyone say it out loud. There is a time for everything and a season. Let's try it again, 9 a.m. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Now, maybe you've heard this passage before. It's beautiful, it's poetic, and it's so true. Time to be born, a time to die, time to plant, time to uproot, time to kill, time to heal, time to tear down, a time to actually build. There's a time actually to weep. There's a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. Do you see what God's teaching us here? What God wants us to get through Solomon's writing here is that there is a season for everything. And that everything and everyone exists within a season. God designed it so that don't miss it. God designed it so that the seasons we experience outside invite us to pay attention to the seasons we are experiencing inside. It's a clue, it's a reminder, like, oh wait, there is something going on in me. And that there's things that only God can do only in the season that you are in. Many spiritual writers call this idea, folks who write to the deeper stuff of God call this the seasons of the soul. That we all have seasons to our soul. Your soul, and therefore your life, is always in a season. It experiences all of what we just read in Ecclesiastes 3, the highs, the lows, the loves, the losses, the breakdowns, the breakthroughs, all of them existing within a season. Your soul is always existing, and I would say always moving through some particular season. In other words, there's no cruise control for your soul. It's not just like you set it and forget it. To grow in a life with God, to experience God in your everyday transforming life, you're not going to be on cruise control. You're going to be moving through some sort of season. Now, if we know each other, we've hung out recently, if we've had coffee, you've no doubt heard me share that this last fall was a really hard season for me. Use that language. It was a really hard season, specifically a really hard leadership season. One of the hardest I've ever had to walk through, and that's after 2 years of COVID. This fall particularly, incredibly hard and difficult season. If I'm being honest with you, as I've been honest with God, I felt stuck, felt stressed. My faith felt stretched and like it wasn't enough. It all just felt hard. Everything just felt hard. And at times, if I'm honest, I felt hopeless. Felt hopeless. Throw up my arms. I don't know, God. I don't know what's going to happen. My soul was in a season of struggle. It was struggling. It was hard. It was not able to put all the pieces together with God. And if we were to know each other and we were to be at that same table having that same cup of coffee together, I would tell you that I'm actually no longer in that season. I was in that season for months. But I'm not in that season today. I'm in a different season. My soul today feels alive. It feels energized. It feels deeply connected to God. I have real hope for actually what's next. I'm having a deeper growing of gratitude in my life. I am in a new season. Does that make sense? And it's important to note that there's some differences between the seasons of the soul and the natural seasons that we walk through, because the seasons of the soul don't have a predictable length of time, like the 6 months of winter we have here in Chicago. It's not a predictable amount of time. You don't know how long your season is gonna last. And they don't always follow as a sequential order like they do in nature. You can be in a season in your soul for a couple of months or for a couple of years. And you can be in a season of winter, which we're gonna break down in a second, and then suddenly in a season of summer. So it doesn't exactly follow the same way, but you get the idea, right? You are always in a specific season. And so the question is do you know what season your soul is in? Right now today, do you know what season your soul is in? To help you answer that question, because I think it's so important, you cannot grow if you do not know what season your soul is in. I thought maybe we could take a minute and just briefly walk through some of the seasons of the soul to see not only where you are at, but specifically where God is at work in this particular season in your life. So let's start with the season that we all so desperately hope that we're in right now in Chicago. Let's start with spring, okay? So you might want to jot down a few thoughts on this, because I'm going to ask you to identify which season you're in. Spring is a time, we all know, spring's a time of new life. New life emerges. Everything is fresh and green and alive. The flowers are blooming. There's birds chirping. There's guys wearing shorts way too early. We know what spring feels like around here. If we had to sum up spring in a phrase, it would be all is new. In spring, all is new. Who's favorite, just by show of hands, who loves spring here? Raise your hand if you love that new. Yes, isn't it such a fun time? That's why we're so anticipatory of it coming here. See, when your soul is in a season of spring, you are in a season of growth with God. You can see that you are no longer the same person that you were in that previous season. You're aware of how you are growing. You feel alive and connected to God in new and fresh ways. You can just tell, and others can tell, that you're growing. You're taking new ground. Maybe you've had a season like that. Have you ever had a season like that where you just felt like, man, I can't explain it all, but I am growing. I feel alive. I feel connected. If you're in a season of spring right now and you just feel like, man, I feel alive, I feel connected, I feel like I'm growing, here's what I would just encourage you with. Enjoy that. Soak that in. Soak in every second of that. There's no shame in your game. If you were in a season of spring, enjoy this season. And I would say to you, that's the season that I'm in right now. And I'm so grateful to be in a season of spring. As I said, I feel deeply connected to God. I feel like I'm moving into new spaces with God. There's new opportunities, new spaces opening up for me. There's new opportunities that I just couldn't have seen in the previous season. It feels new. And if you're in a season of spring, or you want to know a little bit more about a season of spring, I would say, I believe in spring what God is wanting to unleash new things in your life. There's a reason you are growing. There is fruit that is coming. So lean in to the new possibilities, to the new patterns, to the new perspectives that God is giving you. And maybe you would say right now, I feel like I'm in that kind of season of spring. But we all know that spring eventually gives way to another season that we love around here in Chicago, and that's summer, right? Who here loves summer? Just raise your hand if you love summer. Come on, seriously. In summer, like in Chicago, there ain't no shy like summertime shy, right? Like we go all out. We do the most for summer when it comes to summer. And when you're in a season of summer with God, all feels well. It's different than spring where all is new. When you're in a season of summer, it's like, all feels well. There's a deeper peace about you. There's a greater sense of purpose about you. Things feel, in the best way possible, more settled and still about you. It's not that there aren't challenges, it's just that those challenges don't distract you or define you like they did in previous seasons. In the season of summer, when your soul is in a season of summer, it's a time for rest, replenishment, reflection. It's a time to sit back and enjoy, to soak it in, to go slow with God, just like we love to do around here. I believe when your soul is in a season of summer, God is wanting you to just be still and know that he is God and he's in control of it all. To just soak in his presence, to be satisfied in his goodness, to see him at work in your life and in this world, to recognize it and rest in it. And so the encouragement here, if your soul is in a season of summer, is to just root yourself in God as best you can, knowing, listen, that this season, as good as it is with God, is not going to last forever. That's just not how it works in this life with God, because summer eventually gives way to fall. And in the season of fall, what it feels like is it feels like all is not as it was. Spring, all is new. Summer, all is well. Fall, all is not as it was. Fall is a time of transition. You know this, right? The days are getting shorter. The nights are getting colder. The leaves are changing color. The pumpkin spice lattes are in bloom. Scarves are suddenly everywhere. Like, we see that things are changing around us. And I believe in nature, at the very least, if not in the season of our soul, fall is God's way of telling you that winter is coming. It's preparing you for what's next. God is telling you that winter is coming. And you might be in a season of fall right now, where there are changes going on in your life. There are transitions, things that suddenly are not as they were in your life before. Maybe for you, the kids have recently moved out of the house, and so you're in a whole new phase as a parent, or maybe your friends have moved away over COVID. People that were so close and tight to you, they're no longer here and available like they once were. That's a transition. Maybe the job that you thought was so secure isn't as secure as you thought. Maybe there's a relationship that's on the ropes, might possibly even be coming to an end. It could be that you're caring for an aging parent, or you're living now in the reality of the loss of a parent. It's changed. These are all transitions. And what I would say is they're not just transitions, they are transformations from what life once was to what it will be. Psychologists call this space liminal space. Liminal space. It's the space between the no longer and the not yet. Anyone feel that? You ever felt that? Maybe you're feeling it right now, that space that you're in between the it's not what it was, and I don't think I'm at where I want to be. It's the no longer and the not yet. This is what it feels like when your soul is in a season of fall. It's uncertain, it's unknown, it's unclear. And when your soul is in a season of fall, what I would say is it's a time of letting go, which can be a really scary thing. Just like the trees let go of their leaves, so too we must let go of what was if we're ever going to walk into what's next. It's what a season of fall actually feels like. And I believe that in fall, what God is encouraging us to do, what God is encouraging each and every one of us to do, is he's preparing you. He's tilling the soil. He's pruning the branches. He's inviting you to lovingly let go of what was, no matter how bad you want it back, so that you can be available to what is. And maybe you're in a season of fall right now. That resonates with you. And we know that fall is not all there is to our story with our soul and with our seasons here. We know that sometimes we find ourselves in a season that none of us ever want or would ever choose, and that is the season of winter. Now, be honest, by show of hands, how many of you, your favorite season is winter? Just be honest and raise your hand, be proud. If you love winter, go ahead and raise your hand. Awesome, 7 of you, great. That's exactly what I thought. Follow-up question for the 7 of you, why? Who hurt you? Why do you love winter like that? Because in winter, especially in our soul, here's what it feels like: all is lost. I bet there's some folks that can relate to that. It just feels like all is lost. We know we experience winter as a season of quiet, of of cold. The leaves are gone, the birds have flown south, and honestly, at times, it feels like God has forgotten us and forsaken us. But that doesn't mean that God's not still moving in the season of winter in your soul. Doesn't mean that there's not still growth happening in your life with God. What it just means is that when you are in a season of winter, the growth that you so obviously see in spring, that growth goes underground. You can't see the things that are actually happening beneath the surface. Do you know that that's actually true of trees and plants? You know, when they go through a season of winter, all we see is dead and desolate on the surface. But what's actually happening is those roots continue to grow and draw nutrients and actually go to deeper places in winter. And you may not actually see it ever on the surface, but you will in the next season because of that growth going underground. Listen, that growth is slow, to be sure, but it surely is growth. And you might be feeling like right now you're in a season of winter right now. You've moved maybe from a time of letting go to now it just feels like a time of loss. Loss of a job, the loss of a friendship, the death of a dream, the end of a relationship, of a marriage, the passing of someone that you love. It just feels like all is lost. And in winter, your heart, at least I know for me in the seasons that I've been in winter, my heart feels heavy. Prayer becomes hard. Hope seems lost. That's winter. And all of us have probably, whether we had language for it or not, have faced a winter or two. But if you haven't, you will. And maybe you actually are even right now. And for those of us who are in a season of winter right now, if you're in that season and you're like, doggone it, he's reading my notes, that's right where I'm at. Can I just encourage you, if you're in a season of winter, can I just remind you of something that you may know but may not believe? You are not alone. You are not alone in this season of winter. I know it may feel like that sometimes, but you are not alone. And our tendency when our soul is in a season of winter is to do what we do in the actual season of winter. It's to pull in. It's to just pull in to protect ourselves. But can I encourage you, for those of us who are in a season of winter, to not pull away from others during this season. You actually need people now more than you even know. So please don't pull away. Please show up as you are, where you are. And if you know someone, maybe you're married to someone, maybe you're in a relationship with someone who's going through, you know that they're going through a season of winter. Can I encourage you, don't pull away from them. They need you now more than you even know. Not to fix them, not to try and fast track them out of this, but to be with them and remind them that they are not alone and that this season will not last forever. These are the 4 seasons of the soul. And each one of us right now is in one. I've shared 2 that I've been in over the last 6 months, a fall and a spring. But the truth is, I've been in all of them multiple times. And while the specifics of each time I'm in one of those seasons is different, the themes are the same. It feels the same. Listen, you walk with God long enough and you will experience all of the seasons of the soul multiple times. And no matter what season that you may find yourself in right here, right now, today, I believe that God has something uniquely for you in this unique season. But if you want to grow in whatever season that you are in, you have to know what season you are in. Because here's what I've seen to be true throughout the Bible. Here's what I've seen to be true in some 40 plus years of following God. It's just simply this, is that God only works within the season that you are in. God only works within the season that you were in, not the one you want to be in, not the one you used to be in, the season that you are in. God's not going to go back to your past and say, wasn't that great? Let's just go back there again. God's not going to go out into your future and say, here's how it's all going to work out for you. No, God is going to work in this present season. The God who's above space and time chooses to be in this specific place with you in the season that you are in. And he only works for your growth and his good in the season that you are in. And God always works within the season that you are in. God always works within the season you are in. God has not forgotten you. God has not lost you, even if you've lost sight of God in this season. Holy Spirit's not gonna be on cruise control with whatever season you are in. God is at work, whether you see it or not. He is faithful to you in every season, but you have to be faithful to the season that you are in. And to seek God and to be with God as you are in the season that you are in. So I want you to think about your transforming life, wherever you may be at with God. What season of the soul would you say you're at today? What season do you think you're in right now? Is it spring where all is new and alive? Is it summer where all is well and there's peace and contentment? Fall where it's not as it was, all is not as it once was. There's a letting go, that liminal space. Winter where it just feels like, man, all is lost. It just feels hard and hopeless. Which one resonates most for you right now? Not which one do you want to be in. Which one are you actually in? And would you be willing to trust God in that season? To trust that God is with you, whatever season you may be in, and that God actually wants to use the season that you are in for your growth. He's only gonna work within that season, and he's always going to work within that season. He wants to do something special and unique, transformative in the season that you're in. So your homework for this week is really simple. I just want you to identify what season you're in right now today, as best you can. You know the specifics and the details of your life. You know how it feels right now. What season do you think you're in? What does it feel like for you? And then here's part 2 of the homework. This is the next step. So first is to identify where you're at. Second is this: would you have the courage to share it with one person this week? Now, for those of you who are in our table groups, you have a huge advantage because that's what we're gonna be talking about this week at around our tables. But if you don't happen to be in one of our tables, who's a friend that you could talk to? Who's someone you can say, hey, this last week at church, we talked about da, 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 da. I really feel like I'm in this season. And then ask them, what season do you think you're in? Have one conversation this week where you say out loud, where you name, this is the season that I am in. And in so doing, I want to encourage you in that to just be aware, to invite God in to do what only God can do in that unique season. So I want to pray for you. I want to ask you to stand. I want to pray for those of us who are in whatever season we are in right now. Go ahead and stand. And I just want to pray, and I'm not going to have you like raise your hand or come forward for anything, but if I name a season and you go, that's me, would you just maybe put a hand on your heart when I name it? So we can just kind of keep our hands open, our eyes closed for a second, and I say that season, boy, maybe you just put your hand on your heart and go, that's me, yes, God. So God, I pray for those of us who are in a season of spring right now where all is new. God, thank you for growth. Thank you for new things. Thank you that you are showing us, you were seen on the surface, we're seeing out loud that we're growing, that we're changing, that we're not as we once were. God, thank you for the work that you do in spring. And I just pray, God, that you would help each and every one of us who's in that season to be faithful to that season, to seek and pursue growth at whatever means necessary. And God, for those, my brothers and sisters who are in a season of summer right now, where it just feels good, it feels there's a peace and contentment. They're in a season of summer right now. All is well. God, I just pray that you would pervade their life with your peace, that there would be a knowing in the stillness that you are God and you are good and you are with them and for them, and to enjoy this season of rest and replenishment. And God, for my friends who are in a season of fall right now where all does not feel like it once did, all is not as it once was. There's transitions upon transitions. God, I pray that you'd give them the courage to see those as transformations. That you are helping them let go of what once was so that they can hold on to the new thing that you will do, God, in their life. That it's not all just letting go, but that you have something new for them. But God, would you help them be faithful to this season of transition and transformation? And God, for my brothers and sisters who are in a season of winter right now, they'd be honest to admit that's how it feels. It just feels like all is lost. It feels hard, it feels hopeless. I just wonder where you're even at, if you even care. God, I pray right now that you would remind them that you are actually working in their life, even if they may not see it. You're working in the deeper places, God. You're deepening their roots. You're growing them in ways that maybe they can't even recognize or see. Would you encourage them today that they are not alone and that this season will not last forever, but to be faithful to it as they are in it. God, for all of the seasons that we are walking through, we will walk through, God, our prayer is really simple. We just want to keep our eyes fixed on you. We don't want to lose sight of you. We don't want to lose you. So help us to see you, to find you, to focus on you, and to follow you through the season that we are in. That's our prayer, God. In your name.